Technology's great when it works.
This guy always baffled me. I don't, like the interface to me seems really opaque.
It's a little hanky every now and again, but for the most part, it serves its purpose. You ready to get started?
Yep, sure.
All right, Leadheads. We are back with another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. And I don't know exactly which number this is going to be, but it's in our 360 series, close to 370. And continuing this series that I started a while back with Jack Carr, I've been having different writers and authors on this show. And it's been really good and interesting so far, so I thought I would continue it. And we reached out again to our good buddy David Brown over at Simon & Schuster. And true to form, he has set us up with another very interesting cat to interview here. And my guest this episode is going to be Kyle Mills. And Kyle is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of, get this, over 20 books. I mean, who has the time to write that many books and do the research that goes into it and whatnot? But Kyle took over a series of kind of thriller novels a while back from this gentleman named Vince Flynn, and it's the Mitch Rapp series, which some of you listeners are probably familiar with and have read those. So, Kyle, welcome into the Talking Lead podcast, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So, I kind of got into the thriller novels through Jack Carr. I really kind of what drew me to the Jack Carr series books was the realism, the research that he put into it, and he tried to put as much realism into them as possible. And from what I've heard from other people talk about the Mitch Rapp series, it's very similar to that.
Yeah, Vince started this quite a while ago. I mean, there are 20. I think I'm working on the 20th book in the series. And it follows this CIA operative, the CIA's top operative. I mean, it goes back from when he was in college to now when he's, I don't know, like 44 or something. Mm-hmm. And so Vince was really meticulous, and he was a super popular author. He's one of the biggest authors in the world. And through that, got to meet, a lot of amazing people. I mean, he hung out with President Bush. I mean, he knew a lot of people in the in the military, a lot of operators, CIA, FBI, that helped him out. And I did it a little bit backward to that. My father was an FBI agent for most of his career. He became the legal attaché to the United Kingdom and then finally the director of Interpol. So I grew up around it.
I mean, you say that like nonchalantly, the director of Interpol. I mean, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, it was. Well, it's certainly interesting. I got to live all over the country. I got to live in London for a while. And and so I sort of absorbed that over my entire life. All our friends were always MI5, MI6, CIA, FBI, military. So
I can't imagine
how fun that is.
Well, I can't imagine. No, I mean,
fun.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
So we, when I started writing novels, they say write what you know, and I knew all those guys. So, and, I had those characters in my head. I'd been hearing their stories my whole life.
So were you just kind of like a fly on the wall when your dad's friends would come over and you would hear these stories? Or would you, as you got a little bit older and, I guess interested in it, were they willing to sit down and talk to you about some of this stuff?
Share yeah. Stories? I mean, obviously there's some classified stuff in there. I mean, sure. I remember one guy I knew, they called him C. And I thought that was because his name started with C, but yeah. I never knew what he did for a living. But in the James Bond movies, they use M, and so he was M. But I remember it was illegal to take a picture of him.
Really?
Yeah, and so so sometimes you knew who you were talking to, other times not so much.
So the head of MI6, right there in your living room.
Yeah, here's a funny story of how I figured out he was a big deal. We were driving to the American Bowl in London. That's a American football game. Mm-hmm. and the traffic was horrible to get to the stadium. And he was saying, and me, my dad, and him were in the back car. His driver was driving, and he was really upset that we were going to miss the kickoff. And my dad and I were like, hey, what are you going to do, right? Stuck in traffic, and
Sure.
suddenly some police motorcycles came up, and we jumped over the median, and they closed the highway going the other way. We drove the wrong way up the highway and made it. And I thought, wow, I think this guy must be somebody.
Membership has its privileges, right?
Absolutely. And so, when I started writing about an FBI agent, and I've written about, military guys that are kind of based on people I've known over the years, and sometimes the scenarios and the things they get into are stuff that I've heard about, and then I've sort of twisted around because, back then being an FBI agent was really, and now I think it's more cerebral, but back then, my father's been thrown out of second-story windows and attacked by monkeys, and like it's just like all kinds of crazy stories.
Like trained monkeys, trained killer monkeys.
No, it's like he was. This is back before SWAT and now it's much more controlled. But he used to just drive out into Eastern Oregon. He'd grab some sheriff's deputies or so, whoever he could find, and I think it was a biker gang or something he was trying to arrest. And they finally kicked in the door, and he ran in, and the guy had pet monkeys, and the monkeys all freaked out and were crapping on, like running around, going through the ceiling, crapping on everybody and attacking everybody. So it was really fun to hear those stories.
Yeah, that's definitely a fun one. Now, have you implemented the killer attack monkeys in any of your novels?
No, not yet, but someday.
You've got to do that. Yeah.
Someday. I remember my father was trying to kick in the door. He's a really big guy. He was good at kicking in doors, and he was kicking it and kicking it and kicking it. And they had barricaded it with 2x4s. And so he was trying to kick out the 2x4s, they found out later. And he had to go through a window or something. But got to be careful with the monkeys.
The Fiocchi family has been producing high-quality ammunition since 1876. In 2020, Fiocchi's launching a full line of premium products, everything from self and home defense to the long-range categories. The Fiocchi Blue Guardian line will feature specially tuned products specifically for home and self-defense, featuring lead-free technology and the only NATO-certified zero-pollution primer in the world. Fiocchi's a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Fiocchi trains, Fiocchi protects.
So you started. This isn't, kind of how you started your career. You've got an economics background, right?
Yeah, I studied economics, and I worked in corporate banking before. This is when I was pretty young, but before I got into writing. Yeah.
Yeah. So has this always been a passion of yours? Or is this something that one day you just on a whim decided to do? How did you get into writing?
Yeah, kind of the second. I was a really serious rock climber at the time, and I basically did two things in my life. I worked at the bank and I climbed, and I wanted to do something creative because I had always admired people that could, and I didn't feel like I could. So I was going to learn to build furniture. That was my big plan. And
where did that come from?
Because I don't know. I thought it'd be fun. It's construction, it's design, something you could do with your hands. You could buy all kinds of cool.
So you're going to make like Adirondack chairs or what?
I was thinking like modern, like really cool modern furniture. I had all the like grand ideas about this amazing crap I was going to build.
I got you.
And my wife told me, well, yeah, but you're not very handy. Which is true.
Womp, womp, womp.
Yeah.
Ego deflated.
Yeah. And, truth be told, we live in Wyoming. And, I think I was going to have to fill the whole garage with tools. And she didn't want to be like, out there with the broom, knocking 2 feet of snow off the car every morning to go to work.
Getting
so
around
she was
your
the
furniture.
One that said, yeah. So she said, well, why don't you write a novel? You like to read. And I don't know. I'd never done really well in school with English or anything, so it seemed like a stupid idea, but it stuck in my head, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that. I'll write a novel, and my mom will read it, and
some of your friends,
that'll be the end.
Yeah,
I think that'll be it. It'll be a fun project. learn to write a novel. So I did. I bought all these like how to write a novel for dummies and stuff like that books, and kind of went through them all and wrote a novel. And
did you know anybody in the business before you started doing this, or was just completely cold turkey, jumped into it, not knowing anything?
Kind of, but strangely, my father, and I wasn't entirely aware of this necessarily at the time, was friends with a lot of authors. He was really good friends with Tom Clancy.
Really?
And in fact, he is the pattern for the FBI agent character Dan Murray in the Tom Clancy novels.
That's cool.
And yeah, I met Tom when I was in college, and Tom still had his insurance company, because he had come over to do research for his second novel, and my father was the guy he wanted to put in the novel. Like he had the position that was interested in writing about.
Yeah.
So, but this is before Tom was really famous. And then I don't know why, but my father has all these friends. I remember calling him once when they were living in Virginia Beach, and he said Frederick Forsyth. He's like, well, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm sitting here drinking by the pool with Frederick Forsyth. And I'm like, well, how do you know Frederick Forsyth? He's like, oh, me and Freddie been friends for years. He's down for the week. He's staying for the week. I know, it's so weird.
Just like it's nothing.
Yeah, and but that wasn't. I didn't really talk to any of them much about it. I mean, I asked. I had Tom help me out. Tom Clancy had helped me out and everything, but it was kind of a vacuum because, to be honest with you, I didn't think anything would ever come of it. I mean, my goal wasn't to become an author, like to be a professional author. Really, it just sort of was a project.
And what was your first novel that you wrote?
It was called Rising Phoenix.
Okay. What was that about?
That was about like a former DEA agent. So think back many years that this book came out. The war on drugs was really big. Terrorism wasn't much on the radar yet.
Yeah.
And this was about a former
the late
DEA
90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, it would have been early 90s.
Okay, early 90s.
Maybe to mid 90s. And it was about a former DEA agent who decided he was going to, like on a large scale, poison the U.S. narcotics supply and basically kill all the drug users in the United States.
So kind of a vigilante?
Yeah, a vigilante, and then the FBI agent who's trying to track him down as, all these people are dropping dead of this, these tainted narcotics.
Yeah. So was that guy kind of the protagonist of the book, or was the
the FBI guy that was chasing him was the protagonist of the book, but
okay,
it was a little bit ambiguous. I mean, the DEA guy that was doing it was a really bad guy, obviously, and killed a lot of people. But I thought it was an interesting idea because, in the end, would you save more lives than you took by doing that, getting people to stop using drugs and stuff like that? So that was, I got to build all that into the story, the politics of it, and the kind of moral philosophy of it, which I was interested in.
Now, did that turn into a series?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, the DEA guy, no, but and the premise was one book, but the FBI agent, I think I wrote 4 books about him.
Okay. And what was his name?
Mark Beeman.
Mark Beeman. How do you guys come up with these just stoic studly names? Like
that was before the internet.
Mitch Rapp.
Phone books. Yeah, phone books. So Vince used all people he knew. So like I've met Rapp before.
That's a real person?
Yeah, they're all real people.
I mean, the names though have been changed.
No, there's a guy named Rapp, but his first name isn't Mitch.
I got you.
So some of them are just flat out like there's one woman who I think got killed horribly or something. It was like one of his grade school teachers or something.
Somebody you didn't care for much.
I met her too, yeah. So I didn't really realize that when I took over, but like Irene Kennedy is the head of the CIA, and that's one of, I think, his niece.
Okay.
So
not necessarily people that would fit the profile, but just people in his life he took the names from.
No. I met this one really nice, I think it's like a really good friend of his who was some horrible senator who Mitch Rapp ends up killing or something. She was very proud of that. She's been killed horribly in this book.
So these books are more therapy than anything, right?
Again, they may have been. Yeah, I think they are for most people. You write the guy you want to be and about the things you want to happen.
Right. So the Vince Flynn books, how far into your career did you take that over?
Oh, I'd probably written, I don't know, maybe 14 books or something at that point, and I'd written 3 for Robert Ludlum.
And who's Robert Ludlum? Again, I'm new to this.
Oh, sorry. Robert Ludlum was a really famous author. I don't know if you've ever seen the Jason Bourne movies.
Oh yeah, that's Robert Ludlum.
He wrote those. Yeah.
Okay. So you wrote some Bourne books.
Huh?
You wrote some of the Jason Bourne books.
Yeah. No, I didn't write the Jason Bourne books. I wrote a different series for him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a guy named Eric von Lisbader took over the Jason Bourne books.
I got you.
So I had done that. I had done a bunch of my own books, and then and then Vince Flynn died at a very young age of cancer, and he had written this Mitch Rapp character who's kind of one of the icons of thrillerdom, I guess.
Spy, espionage kind of stuff.
Yeah, kind of like James Bond and Jason Bourne and Mitch Rapp and Jack Ryan from the Tom Clancy series. Jack Reacher, some of the big characters in the thriller world, and his was one of those. So I ended up taking over that series.
Nice. When you took over the Vince Flynn novels, I mean, obviously you would have had to have done the research and gone back and read those. How many was he into it at that point when you took over?
I'm writing number 20 right now, and this will be number 7 for me. So I'll be done like 13 of them, I guess.
Okay. Are you averaging like one a year, or how often are you cranking those out?
Yeah, I do one a year.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, I had been a fan anyway. Just I read them for fun. But I had read them for fun over, the course of whatever that was, 15 years. So I went back and reread them all in order and, took tons of notes and everything to try to figure, well, the universe itself is really complicated. If you think about I counted, it was like 6,500 words pages, 6,500 pages total in the series. So that universe was huge, all the people that, he knew, his friends, his enemies, the people who had died, all the things that had formed his character. So you kind of had to know all that before you embarked on writing the book.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in order to carry on the storyline. Have there been any movies made from this series? Yeah,
the first book in the series is called American Assassin, and that was made into a movie. I guess that would have been a couple of years ago now.
You know what? I think I saw that.
Yeah, you might have.
American Assassin. Was that where he's on vacation and they kill his girlfriend at a resort? And then
Dylan O'Brien played Mitch Rapp.
He gets recruited. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's Mitch Rapp.
That's Mitch Rapp, the first novel of Mitch Rapp. So when Mitch was really young, obviously, like he would have been like 23 or something in that book. Yeah. Now he's in his mid-40s.
Okay. Nice. Are there plans for other movies?
Hopefully, yeah.
Because that was a good movie.
Shut down. Yeah, it was a cool movie, and the actors did a great job. It had Michael Keaton in there as his mentor, and but we're hoping either that or a series. But right now, Hollywood's a little shut down because of COVID.
Well, they're opening back.
They are. Yeah, we're
slowly coming back.
Of course, who knows? COVID's spiking again, so
they say.
We'll see. Yeah.
So they say,
So we'll see.
When the real numbers come out, who knows? Election's coming up. Let's see what happens after the election, right?
Well, hopefully it'll get a little under control. I live in Spain as well, and they've had a lot of real problems with it.
Have you been over there since this?
No, I couldn't go back.
Yeah, they shut it down.
Closed. They shut down when I was supposed to go back. So we've been here in Wyoming.
So is that like a vacation home in Spain there? Or do you spend a lot
I
of
don't know.
time in Spain?
I'm a legal resident of Spain, so I would say it's more than a vacation home. I spend like a year there. The ideal would be a year here, a year there, but
Right.
it's a little hard to get there now. So we're trying to decide. We were supposed to go in June, but
What
now
part of
we're trying
Spain do you live in?
the south, and it's kind of in the mountains in the south, a town called Granada.
Oh wow. How long have you been there?
Well, we just got back. We were there for a little over a year, and then we went back again, and then now we can't get back. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Well, my immigration status though is getting a little shaky because I haven't been there for a long time now. So we'll see.
You would
what
think that
happens.
they would take this under special circumstances, but I mean, who knows?
And they have to some extent. So my hope is that I will not lose my residency, but we'll see. I mean, I just have no idea. Like I said, my plan was to go back in February, but now they may decree that you can't travel internally. Like internal travel will be really hard until May. So
Right.
kind of hard to
Was
get
this
around.
a place you'd picked out in your younger years, traveling around with your dad, with your family, or is this?
I had been there. I've kind of been lucky in that I've been able to travel all over the world. And then, as a writer, it's pretty flexible. Nobody really knows where you are. Plus, I like to go places that I write about.
Sure.
So ideally, I'd be living somewhere that I was writing about.
Bring some more realism into it, right?
Yeah, it's easy. You got to get the sights and the smells. So we started, my wife and I started going and living in places for longer periods of time. So we spent a lot of time in South Africa, living in Cape Town, and we've lived in Istanbul and London. And we really loved Spain. And so we thought, well, we're just going to, instead of staying for 3 or 4 months, which is what you could stay for 3 typically, a tourist visa, and then you had to get out. We decided we'd just see if we could become residents of Spain and then kind of split our time between the two.
Very
United
nice.
States and Spain. So
Now,
we'll see. We weren't counting on the whole global pandemic thing.
Well, I don't think a lot of people were, and here we are, dealing with it, and that's what we got to do. We adapt and we overcome, and that's seems to be what we're doing, finding a way to overcome it. Well, are there great rock climbing there in Spain? Is that one of the things that attracted you to Spain?
Yes,
Spain?
I mean probably some of the best in the world. However, I'm mostly a mountain biker and backcountry skier now because climbing is a young man's
because
sport.
Age.
Yeah, it's just.
I feel you.
It's good. Mountain biking and backcountry skiing are great because you can do them pretty well into your like twilight years. But grabbing hold of things and pulling on them as hard as you can is not great. And I started to fall apart in my kind of early to mid 30s and decided I'd like to be able to, lift my hands over my head when I'm old and move my fingers.
You're right.
So kind of backed off that and don't do much of it anymore.
So what about the backcountry skiing? And I'd assume the mountain biking's amazing there also.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere, mountain biking and backcountry skiing both really good in both places. So Granada, obviously I live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is one of the big ski resorts in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And Granada is kind of unique in that it's in the mountains in the Sierras, but so there's a ski hill maybe 15 miles from my house, but it's weird because the town is so much lower. The weather in the winter there is really nice. So you'll literally see people standing in the bus stop. You'll be walking by them in shorts and a t-shirt. They'll be standing there with their skis in full ski garb, waiting for the bus to take them up there. So it's kind of ideal. It's a great climate. You can do whatever you want.
Like
winter,
spring skiing in Colorado or Wyoming, I guess. Yeah.
Or you could drive down to the beach. It's about an hour. Go down to the beach. So it's kind of a nice spot.
Get the
Food's
best
good.
of all worlds.
Yeah, that's kind of what we discovered. Old World Heritage Site. I lived in a 500-year-old Arab house. Ooh. It was built when the Arabs controlled that part of the country. So
that was
cool.
beautiful, huh?
Yeah, it was great. It's really interesting because a lot of the Arabic carving, the writing was still in the archways and stuff, and super cool place to live.
Now, have you learned? Obviously, I would assume you've learned Spanish. You know Spanish.
My Spanish is pretty good, but it's a tough language to learn, I find, particularly when you're old.
Yeah.
In adult. So
well, in different areas too. You know, they've got different, I guess, dialects.
Yeah, and Granada is super hard. It's like a thick. I guess it'd be the equivalent of trying to learn a thick Southern accent.
Kind of like me.
Yeah, no, I don't consider, like, my father-in-law, I have a hard time understanding. He's from Southern Virginia.
Okay.
And that's the way it is in Granada. So you have like this really thick Southern accent, and they have a really strong lisp.
Yeah.
So it's taken me a while.
It's probably a little older dialect too than
yeah,
some of the other Spanish ones.
And there's actually dialect there called Andaluz, which is not really Spanish, and mostly the older people speak that there. So, I mean, it's a little challenging, but if I get around a bunch of really old people out in one of the pueblos in a small town, I would say that I understand about 30% of what they're saying. But I don't know that anybody from the north of Spain would do much better, so I don't feel too bad about it.
There you go. I mean, that's the people you need to be hanging out with there. I mean, to really get the culture. The older folks.
Yeah, food's great. It's
is that more the seafoodish kind of food there?
No, not where I am, because I'm up in the mountains. If you live down on the coast, for sure, they like their ham.
Ah, okay. They dig on the pigs there, the swine.
And it's hilarious. Yeah, you'll go to a cathedral and there'll be a statue of a pig out front.
That's funny.
They're into their pig.
Are they into bacon?
They don't really have bacon.
Man, you've got to introduce them to bacon.
I know, seriously. Honestly, one of the hardest times I think I've ever spent with that is when we were living in Istanbul, a Muslim country, so they didn't have pork.
They don't dig on swine.
I didn't even think about that when we moved there. And after about, I don't know, it was like 3 weeks or something, I'm like, there's something missing in my life. What is it?
Bacon.
And I realized, God, it's bacon. And so we found it was funny. We found a store, like a Christian store, that had bacon in it, but it was, I swear to God, it was like 50 euros a pound.
Oh my gosh.
Or something. So I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and smell it.
It's worth every penny though.
Can I have one piece?
I've paid more for less. Oh. So in your novels that you've got going on, the one that's out new is Total Power, and that's the Mitch Rapp series. Let's talk about that book that you've got out. So how does this continue Mitch's saga?
Yeah, so Mitch's saga, like I said, goes from when he was in college to now he's like 44 and is the CIA's top operative. And there is a gap between kind of when he's really young and when he's in his probably early 30s. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's been pretty consistent. Every book picks up where the last book left off.
Now,
I'm stuck with that.
Is Mitch a rogue type operator, or is he a by the book kind of character?
With the CIA, it's hard to tell. Are you rogue, or are you just doing what they quietly want you to do, but don't say that out loud, and wouldn't necessarily stand behind you if anybody found out? So he and the director have been really, really close since he was basically in college, since she recruited him.
Gotcha.
So he is doing what he's doing with her knowledge. Would I say that everybody has knowledge of that, or that it's all completely legal? No, definitely not.
So a little edgy.
Yeah, a little edgy. He operates within the U.S. borders, which is a no-no for the CIA and things like that.
Supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Which is probably a good thing in real life, but in this book, we need him. So and this book is the premise is that basically an American psychotic backed up by some terrorists are able to take down the U.S. power grid in a way that could keep it down for a really long time, which would be incredibly devastating to the United States. I mean, the government has estimated in real life that 90% of us would die if the grid went down and it stayed down for a year.
Oh, wow.
So this is about sort of the battle to find out who did it, how they did it, and get the power back on.
And to do the research on this, where did you draw your information from?
A lot of government documents. I'd actually written a book early in my career that was sort of about a group of environmental terrorists who were trying to destroy the oil supply.
Yeah.
But my hero sort of saves the day. And I, in the back of my mind, I always thought, maybe that was the wrong book to write. Maybe the a more interesting book would have been if he didn't save the day, and you'd have to start the book with that. And then you have this operating environment that's completely unique,
Mm-hmm.
Everything's in the dark. There are no communications. You can't pump gas. Americans are desperate,
Communications
hungry.
down.
Yeah, communications are down. Eventually
No
the water
internet.
supply
What are we
goes.
going to do? Oh my God,
Yeah,
no more
your
Amazon.
cell phone. And it's been even more, I think it's been more impactful even with COVID, because I went into a lot of detail explaining kind of what would happen and sort of the steps of what would happen, because I don't think people really understand how reliant they are on power and on, just the systems that keep America running, the government, the, private industry, transportation. And then now, COVID broke before this book came out, and I think people have a much deeper understanding of, what if I went to the grocery store and there was nothing in it?
Mm-hmm.
So
Which
it sort
we've
of came as an
experienced recently.
interesting time. Yeah, we've experienced that recently, and oddly, my last book was about a coronavirus.
Yeah.
So the arc between the books, I think, has been driven home by this.
Yeah, and I'm 50, so this has happened a couple of times through my lifetime. The COVID isn't the first time to where we've had a lack of being able to gas or food or whatever. There's been times in our history where we've gone through this before, but now it's got a new face with the virus, the coronavirus. But I think it's good that our Generation Z or the millennials have experienced it now too. Thank God it wasn't as bad as they originally, had projected it to be. But I think it was a great wake-up call for a lot of these younger generations, the importance in, I don't really like to use the word prepping, but that's it. I mean, being prepared. That's what prepping is for just such an emergency. And you hear it all the time, especially right now. It's hurricane season. Down in our coastal states, they get hit by these hurricanes year after year, and they're always losing power and, access to food and water and, whatnot. And it always seems like a surprise or a shock to people, but it happens every year.
Yeah. And this stuff, particularly with pandemic, I think is sort of by far the greatest threat to humanity. And how you would prepare for it, how you would survive, I think it would be difficult. I mean, a lot of it, I think, would to some extent be luck as to where you lived.
Mm-hmm.
If, there was a big pandemic or power went out. Because if there was a really bad pandemic, if you think about it, the power would go out too. It's not because the people that keep it on would get sick.
Sure.
Or they'd stop showing up to work. So, I'm lucky. I live in Wyoming. There are very few people here, and I live 100 feet from a river you can drink out of, and elk wander through my backyard.
Got some natural resources right there.
Yeah,
you have to scavenge
and not
for.
a lot of competition.
Yeah, until a pandemic happens, and then you're going to have a lot of competition.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that too many people would wander up to Wyoming. I mean, there are only 500. They might.
I don't know.
It's cold, rugged.
I mean, they're going to go where the resources are. And
most people can't walk a mile in the United States.
That's true. That is true.
and it's all uphill.
It is, and it's cold at times.
It's cold, I mean, it's 3 below zero this morning.
Right. Now, are you a hunter?
No, I hate getting up early.
Well, you don't necessarily have to get up early, but
No, I've been a few times, but
fishing.
honestly,
Do you do any of that up there?
I used to fish, but I was terrible at it.
Yeah.
So,
and was it that you were terrible at it, or you just didn't have the patience for it?
I kept hooking myself. So, my wife is a pretty good fisherman.
Yeah.
Fisherwoman, fisher person. But no, I kind of go through my sports as my body wears out.
Yeah.
So I quit rock climbing. I started racing mountain bikes and then got into backcountry skiing. And, I was also a big resort skier, but I kind of wore out. All my friends are going through their knee replacements and I didn't want to go through that. So I feel like fly fishing, I'm going to be big into hunting and fly fishing one day, but
so that's to come. Yeah, you're saving that for your golden years.
For sure. I feel like fly fishing will be perfect. The water will support most of my body weight, and I could just.
Well, it sounds like with your network of friends, you're not going to have any trouble, getting good tips and tricks.
No, and what I've discovered is the easiest way to hunt is wait till one of your friends gets a bison or an elk, and they're so huge they can't eat it. And then you say, hey, I've got this empty box. Could I go into your freezer and fill it? And they're usually happy to let you. And then my hunting is I'm 100% successful.
Keith likes everything about the great outdoors. He's a lot like us. Whether we're bow hunting in the backcountry or plinking in the backyard, we want to enjoy each experience to the fullest. Kel-Tec's 22 caliber P17 is Heath's go-to pistol for a good time, on the range, on the trail, and anywhere in between. Weighing in at only 14 ounces with a full magazine, its compact size makes it easy to conceal or tuck away in a small pack, pocket, or space. It comes out of the box ready with a fiber optic front sight, a threaded barrel, a Picatinny rail, and a price point for any budget. With 3 16-round magazines, it's ready for hours of pure unadulterated enjoyment. It's easy, it's affordable, it's accurate, and it's a damn sweet marvel of plinking innovation. The Kel-Tec P17. It's more bang for less buck.
So in the total power, so we're talking about they're hitting our power grids, and it's domestic terrorism that you're talking about. So you're dealing with domestic terrorists here.
Yeah, fundamentally yes, domestic terrorism. I mean, he gets help from a foreign terrorist group because he needs kind of boots on the ground, which is something he can't do. He's more tuned to the cyber attack part of it, not the physical. He needs people to do the physical attacks. So it's a combination, but I'm kind of interested in that. I mean, we're seeing that. I think, we're seeing the domestic terrorism side increase, I think, almost daily, it seems like, in the United States. I mean, the head of Homeland Security was just talking about, kind of some of the right wing and white supremacist groups. We just saw them, try to, planning to kidnap a governor and stuff. So obviously we saw Timothy McVeigh historically. So I think
we've got
the
Antifa people now, and the riots and the things that they're instigating too. I consider that
and it'll
terrorism.
be interesting to see if that turns into a terrorist movement.
I think it's already there. It's
when I depends on how you define terrorism. I don't consider like demonstrations and riots. Like, I'm not putting that in exactly.
So
the
you
same
don't
category.
you don't consider a riot domestic terrorism where they're burning buildings down and looting and killing police officers?
What I'm talking about is from a writing standpoint.
Okay.
It's not really something that someone would investigate and like prevent at the nick of time. Like one guy would, go in and prevent at the nick of time. But I consider it a different category of sort of civil unrest and something that you would use, a larger enforcement system against police, National Guard, stuff like that. So from a novel writing standpoint, not really a traditional terrorist plot.
So not really
Whereas
something a
if
reader would be interested in, kind of thing.
Well, I'm thinking more like, would Antifa ever revolve into an organization that would try to, assassinate the president or blow up a building or something like that, which would be something that would be more novel worthy, maybe.
Yeah. Well, so something that I've noticed, and I think you haven't you written a book in the past that had to deal with, some sort of a virus or contagion or something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, a few times, yeah. So my last book was about a coronavirus.
Okay.
So, a terrorist group, an Islamic terrorist group, trying to sort of smuggle in sick people with the idea of spreading it through these people that were infected. And then I've done that. I had a book I wrote for the Ludlums that was about a parasitic infection that. In a way, it was a zombie book because I'm a huge fan of the zombie genre.
Oh, good. Yeah, me too.
It was these parasites that would affect, people's brains and turn them very violent, kind of like rabies, the way people think of rabies.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun to write because I've always wanted to write sort of a zombie book.
Nice. How long ago was that?
Oh, God, that would have been probably close to 10 years ago.
Okay, so what about the coronavirus one? How long ago was that one?
That was my last book, so that just came out in paperback. That's called Lethal Agent.
So that would have been well before the coronavirus pandemic that we've got now.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny when the paperback came out. I thought, God, is anybody going to want to read this, or does everybody have coronavirus fatigue? So fortunately,
I think it's just the opposite of that. People are wanting to learn more about that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's absolutely has been the opposite of it. People love that book and have really written it. It's funny for me. I watch the Spanish news every night to watch it in Spanish to figure out to keep up with what's going on in Spain and
what's going on at your house. Yeah, who's watching my house?
For Spanish. But I mean, I can't even watch it anymore because it's all coronavirus all the time, and I've just given up. I can't stand it.
Yeah,
so
I'm the same way.
Just want something, something about soccer or something, anything.
Well, what was your inspiration for writing about? And was it specifically the coronavirus that you were writing about, or was it just?
Yeah, it was a coronavirus. So you have SARS was the famous.
Was a corona? Yeah.
Yeah, that was. There was also MERS, which people know about, which was Middle Eastern. It's much more deadly, but did not take off quite as quickly. And so that was the pattern.
A lot more deadly, too.
Mine was called, YARS. So it was Yemeni acute respiratory syndrome. And I was interested in doing it. One of the reasons was because Mitch Rapp, I like throwing new things at him. So
this was a Mitch Rapp?
This is the Mitch Rapp series.
Okay.
And he had never had to deal with a bio threat. Not really up his alley. He's not a sciencey kind of guy, and tends to, kind of a problem you can't solve with a gun necessarily. So
it's not dealing with a person at this point.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a terrorist group, but
sure.
In the end, it was the bugs that were going to get him, not the terrorists so much, and so an uncomfortable position for him to be in.
So where did you go to do your research for that? Obviously you went back and studied the previous coronaviruses that had existed. Did you go to a certain organization to get your information?
It was all over. World Health Organization, CDC. I knew a guy that was an infectious disease specialist. So I had a few different places. Unfortunately, I was not able to go to Yemen because it's pretty much a war zone. So
a little dangerous.
I had to extrapolate that from other places I'd traveled through in the Middle East. But so basically various sources for that one.
So I mean, it's just because I've noticed several books, movies, and whatnot that were based on that theme. That just maybe a year, 2 years prior to us getting this, it just seems coincidental, you know? It's like, you guys knew about this. You knew there was a potential for this. You know, even though you're writing fiction, you're basing it on reality.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any question that this is the number one it's probably number 1 through 10 threats to humanity. I mean, you think just the United States, we've lost 200,000 people to coronavirus. Compare that to wars. Compare that to terrorist attacks. I mean, it's just an order of magnitude larger. Not all our wars, obviously, but most of them. So, and the effect it could have on the entire world, the effect it could have on
but minuscule compared to other diseases that we face, you know, that we've had, like cancer, you know. Right.
Yeah, minuscule. Exactly. But it could, I mean, if it broke out, it could, it could be just incredibly devastating.
It would be like the Black Plague back in the
like the 1400s.
1400s.
Well, there have been many plagues, but the big one was the Black Death. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you're talking about, like, where I lived in Spain, there were places that took 80% casualties during that. You had, I mean, it transformed society. You had, like, literally there, I did a lot of research on this, and, you know, you literally would have people would be they partied a lot because they figured they were going to die. And you would literally, if you didn't need more chairs for your party, you just walk into a house and get them, because your assumption was, people were all dead in there. And now, this is really interesting, there were these little windows in the buildings where they would, so if you went and bought something, you'd get it through the little window. There were plague windows because they didn't want you in their building.
Right.
And they've reopened those. Like, I never really noticed them in the towns because they were kind of closed up.
Kind of like a drive-through.
Yeah, they're like a drive-through. Yeah, but 1400.
Yeah.
So they've reopened them. So if, like, you want to go to your pharmacy and it's in an old building, they'll hand it through the plague window.
Wow. History repeats itself.
History repeats itself, but not as bad. You know, nowhere near as bad.
Right.
But if you think about what would happen if, you know, we took those kinds of casualties. I mean, back then, you know, a lot of people were subsistence farmers. They could handle life on their own. There wasn't a lot of support, external support. In fact, it helped them because, you know, if you had, you know, a family of 20 farming 1 acre, you know, now there were 2 of you and you had plenty of food.
Right.
That would not be the case now. You would have a massive collapse in society, in the systems that keep everybody alive. So even if you didn't die of it, you would probably die of something else. I mean, when the power goes out, the water pumps go out. So can you live without water being pumped to your house, without sanitation? You know, most people can't. They don't live close to the water source. So it's something we need to really prepare for and be able to handle. Absolutely. And we could be doing a lot better. I mean, hopefully we're going to start learning some lessons and, you know, the hindsight.
We've been doing this series here on the show, and it's more about self-ownership, you know, self-reliance, kind of topics. And, and it deals with, you know, being able to provide for yourself and your family during these times, you know, and it gets back to the prepping, you know, storing the water, the food, the medicines, you know, type things. Do you get into like those type things in any of your books with your characters?
Yeah. So in this one, for instance, Mitch Rapp is really, really well prepared because he's been preparing his whole life to be attacked. So he has this house that he's built. It's kind of this modern house on top of this hill, and he's surrounded by people he knows, but it's a little bit of a bunker. You know, he has solar panels, wind, he has a secured well, a couple of years of food, weapons, you know, all this stuff. He can black it out. But he also spent millions of dollars on that and had a reason to do it. So not really, he lives out in the country away from people, except for the people around him who are all his friends.
Right.
So it's not really practical for people. There's another character in this book that's a Russian agent who sees it coming, but doesn't have those kinds of resources. And so she's sort of packed her apartment in DC with all this stuff. But, it depends on how long it lasts.
Sure.
And you have a real problem if you're in a city and the water goes out. You're going to die.
Yeah.
And you can't walk down to the Potomac and drink out of it because then you die even quicker.
Yeah.
So the ability of 350 million people to live in the United States is predicated on sort of a lot of cooperation and a very complex machine. So
if one of those cogs of that machine gets thrown out, then we're in chaos.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, if you think about, anybody out there that, just think about, okay, turn off the taps in your house and don't go to the grocery store. Now live for a year. It's not going to be that easy.
No.
So
not without skills,
Yeah, well, without
you gotta learn those skills.
Enormous amount of skills
and they're learned.
Preparation.
Yeah, they're learned. You just don't pick those up. You're however old the human species is doesn't just kick in, and your hunter-gatherer instincts.
Yeah,
I mean they'll kick in, but you don't know what to do.
It's hard because hunter-gatherers didn't live in heavily populated, areas. There's not much to hunt and gather if you're living in New York City, for instance. Right. So, and even like water. I mean, I was thinking about this, like how would I survive, and what would be my chances of surviving if this happened? Like a water source. I mean, even if you've got a clean water source a mile from you,
mm-hmm.
well, you've got to go down and get enough water to survive a mile from you. You don't have a car. You got to walk down there and get it. So
expose
a lot
yourself,
of people don't live near that. So, these are things to think about and things that America, I think, needs to be prepared for. I mean, for instance, our military is not on its own grid. So their power goes out with ours. Nobody's coming to save you. It's not like a hurricane where FEMA and the military and everybody shows up
mm-hmm.
to help out, so I think it's something that the United States needs to think about. We need to think about what we can do, what we would do in a pandemic that was more serious, how we would prevent the spread, how we would survive. So keep the machines running. And I'm not sure. The answer is complicated and expensive.
Well, it's individual responsibility. It's each individual taking responsibility for themselves.
If you say that, everybody's going to die. I mean, like your 90% of people are going to die. You'll have 10% left, and 10% would probably be just people who lived in rural areas.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm more fit than anybody else. I just happen to live in Wyoming.
Yeah. So, geography will play a huge part in that.
Yeah.
Where you're geographically located.
And honestly, probably a lot of rural areas in Africa and stuff like that, those people would survive because
they have been, because they already have been, right?
Fundamental to them. So
yeah. Well, very good. So this sounds like a good book.
All die if it wasn't all it wasn't all like, we're going to get my gun, kill my neighbor, and eat him. I think there are ways. I think America's become a little defeatist with this whole. In fact, I think it was the White House chief of staff basically said, we're not going to get control of the coronavirus. And I feel like America has historically been a country that has said, hell yeah, we're going to get control of this. We can absolutely do it. We can do it better than everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I don't think a lot of people agreed with what he had to say, though, either. So.
Well, no,
because
I hope that that's a minority opinion. Because
he obviously doesn't, reflect the American spirit. Well, it's just like you said, Americans have the never die attitude, and we will prevail, and the whole world will prevail. We'll get a grasp, get a handle on this, and it's like we've already, like we talked about earlier, we've already started to adapt to it. Find ways to adapt
to dying of it. I think, which is kind of a sad situation. Hopefully, I want us to beat it, I guess, is what I'm after. I want, I think about what we did to get going for World War II. Like, I mean, it's hard to even imagine that now. Mm-hmm. We turned over everything. I mean, car companies didn't make cars anymore. They just stopped. and started making weapons. I mean,
Making tanks and airplanes, yeah.
yeah, I mean, everybody made gardens. I mean, they were collecting scrap. People rationed. A half of, a huge number of the men, trained to become soldiers who weren't soldiers before. I mean, it's just incredible what we were able to accomplish. And I feel like, the old guys from World War II are looking at this and thinking, really, this is the best you can do?
Like, we would have had this knocked out, 6 months ago. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, kids. That would be interesting, though. Have you ever thought about going and doing a period piece novel?
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. So, and I've talked about it going back and writing about Mitch when he was young. There's also this guy, Stan Hurley, who was his mentor, who died in a few books back. I killed him off because he was in his 80s. Mm-hmm. And, it would be really fun to go back when he was maybe just getting into the agency and, talking about the Cold War.
Yeah.
And him, doing the drops on the bridge in Siberia, handing a guy a suitcase of cash, which is so much more romantic than, you got your phone, you're like, I've wired you the money. Could you send me the file?
Do you feel like that, that period piece, that genre has been overdone, or do you think there's still, some things that have been left untapped in that era?
I think it was an exciting time. I mean, and the Soviet Union was such an incredible opponent, and I don't know. There's just so much. Even when I started, I think about my early books where the guy was like desperate to find a payphone,
yeah,
or to find out a piece of information. They're like, oh my God, how am I going to figure out I don't know what street this person lives on, and they're ripping
GPS
run into the store to find a map. And now everything is so much at your fingertips. It's, I don't know. I think about the coins, they had hollowed out coins with microfilm in it and stuff like that. Yeah. I just love that crap,
Yeah. I think you should do that, man. Definitely. That would be, I would be interested in that. I'm sure there are other people that would too. Plus it's going to keep that, that kind of history alive. It's not going to get forgotten about.
Yeah, and I think about, the space program, the early space program, and even now you're seeing, I feel like, maybe this is my imagination, but I feel like there are a lot of movies about the world wars. Mm-hmm. Because, so much happened. You could have a battle in World War II that you've never heard of. I was watching a show about one that happened in Italy. It was like we took 200,000 casualties.
Wow.
In a battle. One. And you think that's just like the scale of that is so incredible. You think about writing about stuff like that.
Yeah.
You could write an entire series of novels on that battle.
Yeah.
That one battle.
That would be interesting. Is it a particular battle that you have in mind?
That was, but I can't remember what it was called, but it was like in the Italian mountains, and the Germans had set up like significant fortifications.
Yeah.
And we had to break through, and I would swear it was something like 200,000 casualties. I'm sure one of your listeners will know exactly which one it was.
Now that would be, you got to do the research. So you got to go to Italy. So you got to have to live in Italy for a while.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
So,
and a lot of that stuff's still there, which is really cool. You can go and you find those. You go out into the backcountry, you'll be riding your bike in the backcountry, and there'll be some German bunkers or something, which is pretty fun. I found a Napoleonic aqueduct once on a trail. Yeah, which was kind of cool.
So it was like an undiscovered one before that?
No. People knew. I'm sure people knew it was there, but it wasn't.
They weren't paid no attention.
It was just there. I had to look it up later because I'm like, why is there a piece of an aqueduct here? And I went back and looked it up on the internet.
There was some show, and I don't know if it was what network it was on, but it was this group of guys, and they would travel, and it was over in Europe, and they would go to these where battles had occurred, so they would do the research on the battles, find the areas, and then try to go find where, these battles occurred, and they would go excavate them and find the artifacts and, things, and they were digging up trenches and bunkers, and I mean, it was very interesting.
Oh, it is. It's incredible.
I can't remember the name of that show, but it still should be going on. It was really good. But I would be interested in that.
Was pretty amazing, and some of the artifacts that still exist are incredible.
Now,
because it's not that long ago, if you think about it, it's like 75 years ago or something.
Yeah. I just was it year before last, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Band of Brothers series that was on HBO. This was the last surviving member of Easy Company. His name was Al Mampry, and I got to meet him, and he was on the show at the SHOT Show 2 years ago there in Las Vegas. And it was just I was in awe just sitting there. And, I mean, his mind was just as crisp and clear, recalling, those days back in World War II. And, he couldn't remember what he had for breakfast,
Yeah.
But he could recall those memories just, like they were yesterday, just as clear and concise as could be. But that was a great interview, and he recently passed away, and we don't have very many of the World War II generation left.
No, we had a guy here who was like the most interesting. It's like that beer commercial, the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah,
and this guy was the most interesting man in the world, and he could tell you he had landed in Japan, and at the end of the war, and he was one of those guys where they had told the Japanese, I guess, had told all the women and stuff that you got to fight because they're going to, rape you and kill you and everything. And he was the guy, and he was like, they were running off cliffs.
Oh my gosh.
We were chasing him going, don't stop.
We're not going to kill you.
But he's like, we found out later, they told him, well, we were just going to rape him and kill him anyway. So they might as well just kill themselves. So we were running around trying to keep these people from committing suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And he was 18 or something at the time. Can you imagine 18 years old? Like, we're all high school students now, like running around high school playing football and stuff. And he was chasing people around
trying
Japan.
Keep them from jumping off cliffs. Yeah, it's amazing. So this series of books is definitely something that you've got me interested in it now. So I'm going to start listening to these. Are they available audio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll have to start, and it'll probably take me 2 years to to go through them all.
It's a significant body of work. Yeah, I got to think we're over 10,000. Yeah, probably over 10,000 words now.
So this would be like a good Netflix series that they should put on Netflix and do they could do a series on
it'd be super
the Mitch
fun.
Rapp stuff.
Yeah, it'd be really fun. We're hoping something like that'll happen.
Yeah, that'd be really good. I'd watch it, definitely. So what's your next book that you're doing?
Another Mitch Rapp book. I'm kind of interested in, they're kind of, you could go two ways now. I mean, politics in the United States has gotten so crazy and unpredictable that, you could go two ways with it. You could either pull back and say, I could have somebody come out of Mitch Rapp's past and they could duke it out and just ignore the political environment, or you could kind of charge headlong into it.
Yeah.
And at first I was going to do the first one, and then I decided, no, it'd be more interested to do the latter. So I'm going to kind of charge headlong into sort of the divisions in America and how that affects the world and kind of where all that's going.
Yeah.
And kind of see where that goes. It changes every day, so it's challenging to keep on top of what's happening.
Now, with this franchise of Mitch Rapp, is there a group of people that you consult with, or do you have autonomy and you just kind of do what you want to do?
As far as the story goes, stories go, I pretty much have autonomy. I mean, obviously, to the degree that I don't do something crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, if I
kill Mitch.
Yeah, like kill Mitch Rapp. Yeah, I think that I would get some pushback there, but no, I mean, I feel pretty, I'm pretty fond, obviously, of this series. I was as a fan, and now I am as a writer. So I don't think anybody in the family or the publisher worries that I'm gonna, do anything crazy. I put a lot of thought into where the series is heading and where the character is going to head.
Now, do you writers get together? Do you and, let's say, Jack Carr and Brad Thor, and do you guys get together and say, I'm working on this, and this is the story outline I'm working on, so you guys don't kind of overlap and run into that, oh, you're just copying him kind of thing?
No, I don't. No, in fact, I don't know that it ever comes up. I've talked to Brad and Jack pretty recently, and I don't think it ever came up what we were working on. It's mostly just BSing sessions.
So is it more like you keep it under your cuff too? You don't want them to know what you're working on, kind of thing?
No, not really. I mean, I just told you, right? So,
oh yeah,
not really. I mean, everybody has their own take on things. So, we don't really copy each other, but you might have similar ideas. I mean, because
the virus thing, I know that's overlapped in several novels, and to me it just seems like a too much of a coincidence that about this time all these people wrote about this pandemic of a virus.
That's what it is. I mean, we all read the same news, we all live in the same world, so we are going to perceive the same threats. We all talk to the intelligence community, and we ask them, what are you worried about?
Yeah.
And so their answers, I mean, there's going to be some overlap.
It's kind of foreshadowing also. You see where I'm going with this? I mean, it's just, there's kind of like, there's this foreshadowing where you guys have written about this, 2-3 years ago, and now it's coming to truth. So with this grid thing, is that something that, is high on, the watch list kind of, for our next terrorist act?
Yeah. I mean, I think the government is making some moves now to protect the grid because you tend to fight the last war. We spend enormous amounts of money on a military, but, the head of the NSA has already said publicly that he thinks there are probably a couple of countries that could shut off our grid already. They have the power to do that. Mm-hmm. We find Russian malware in our grid all the time. There are literally hundreds of thousands of attempts to gain access to our grid every day. According to the government, you'd only have to take out like 9 of our major substations to put the entire country in the dark, which would not be difficult. So
because they're unprotected.
They're largely, chain link fence, right? So
yeah.
This is something, I know I've made some enemies saying this, but I would give up an aircraft carrier to put that money into protecting our grid because, the chances of getting into a major naval battle with, another country, particularly since most of them don't even have aircraft carriers, is relatively low, I think. Mm-hmm. And we already have incredible superiority. But, the idea that Russia has the power to click on a laptop and put the entire country into the dark, or the idea that they could smuggle in, 25 spec ops guys and blow up our stuff physically. I mean, I'll take a handheld, rocket launcher of some sort. So, or heck, if you don't want to get that fancy, a bolt cutters and some dynamite. So I think those are things that, but it hasn't happened. So, people they look, I think it's human nature to look to the past and not to the future.
Yeah. Very good. So, where can people go? Obviously, Amazon Prime is a great source for people to, to get your books. Where else can they find those? Do you have a website?
Yeah, check it. It's just kylemills.com. You can also go to the Vince Flynn website. I'm Kyle Mills, author on kind of all the social media,
Instagram, Facebook,
Instagram. Twitter. And, any bookstore, that's open, you could go into and find some installments in the Mitch Rapp series, I think.
I can imagine that you're not doing any signings right now, in person at least.
Not in person. We didn't do that this year. Nobody could.
Are you holding any virtual book readings or anything like that?
Yeah, my tour is over for now. I did a bunch of stuff virtually with a lot of different bookstores, but if you check out my website, I'm doing a few things here and there still. So I'm doing a thing on election night, actually, for people that don't want to pay attention to the election. So you can check that out. I've got a schedule of that on my website.
Okay, that'll be different. Yeah, give you something to do while you're sitting around biting your nails.
Exactly.
Wondering what fate lies in store. Very good, and it's Kyle Kyle Mills, Mills, Leadheads. Go check him out. You're not going to be disappointed. I'm going to go check out your audio selection because I like listening to them. I find I can get more done listening than sitting down and reading because I can't sit down for very long. I'm impatient, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I got to be
a lot
doing
of people
something.
feel that way.
So if I'm doing yard work or
big.
if I'm at the gym, I'm always, I'm listening to something other than music. So
yeah.
Definitely we'll check that out. This episode of Talking Lead is brought to you in part by Occam Defense. The guys at Occam love the AK, but didn't love burning their hands, getting cut by their pre-sharpened gun, or the lack of options for accessories. After spending a few years in the lab, they've recently released the ODS 1775, which brings the best of the AR family to the Kalashnikov's reliability. It's still an AK under the hood, AK mags, forged Polish AK parts, but with American aerospace manufacturing practices and ingenuity. Check them out at OccamDefense.com or on Instagram at Occam Defense Solutions.
New guy.
And sometimes a girl.
Questions.
So are you ready for the new guy questions?
Sure.
All right. So I have this line of questioning that I ask our new guests. And since this is your first time on the show, I'm going to hit you with these. So what is your earliest recollection, and it could be shooting or just exposure to a gun, to a firearm?
Probably my earliest memory, and I have a great picture of it, is going into the FBI's museum. My dad took me there, and they set me up with a Tommy gun. But
Nice.
I still remember I couldn't hold it, so they had it propped against my foot just long enough to take a picture.
Do you still have that picture?
I still do. Yeah, I was like 3 years old or something. The thing was taller than I was.
Oh man, that would be awesome. You should post that. That would make a great picture. Did you get to ever shoot that? The Tommy gun?
I know the Tommy gun. No, it was just a museum.
Well, we can fix that.
One of these days.
We can get you on range with a Tommy gun, definitely. I know people.
That would be fun.
We can make. Well, you need to come to Nashville and do a book signing. We'll get you set up at Royal Range. Very nice 5-star range here in Nashville area, and they have authors that come in and do book signings and stuff like that too.
I'd love it.
Yeah,
that and the 50 cal. I want to shoot a 50 cal.
we can do that. You can shoot 50 cals at this range too.
Perfect.
Full autos. They got everything there. You'll like it. So growing up, so that was your first, your dad was an FBI agent. I'm sure that he taught you proper gun safety rules I'm sure he had firearms around the house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was actually a firearms instructor for a while.
Oh, okay. So did he ever take you out on any of those courses with him?
Yeah. Though typically so I learned to shoot from this old cowboy sheriff in Eastern Oregon because my father didn't want me to. I mean, he helped me with my shooting, my accuracy and everything, but I don't think he wanted to be the one to teach me because he and I used to butt heads a lot.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but I remember this old guy, he had the full-on cowboy hat and the big gun on his hip.
Big six-shooter.
Oh yeah, he was awesome. And he's the guy that taught me to shoot originally.
Yeah.
And then I remember being out on the range with my dad and his 357, and he'd put like 4 rounds in it because I'd always anticipate the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him doing that and yelling at me like incessantly about the front of the gun dipping when I clicked on an chamber.
Right, jerking, expecting that recoil. So I'm sure he had the wheel gun then, being with the FBI.
Yeah,
he was
always
back
he
in the
kept
day.
it, even when they changed.
How long was he in the FBI?
25 years.
25 years. Wow. When did he get out of it? What year was that? Do you remember?
It's kind of hard to say. So he got in when he was like younger than me when he retired. He retired at 52.
Oh, okay.
So he was a street agent. Then he went to DC. Then he went to London, and then he became the director of Interpol. So all of that was sort of in the course of his 25 plus year career.
As the director of Interpol, I assume that he had a firearm during that.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't know. So obviously London, he didn't, because you can't really carry firearms there. Yeah, I would say he pretty much like packed that up when he stopped being a street agent. I mean, we had them in the house, but like you didn't carry a firearm to the J. Edgar Hoover building. You know, he worked in the executive suite.
How do you get the director of Interpol gig? How did he get that?
It comes from one of the agencies. So like it would, for a while, as I recall, it was a long time ago, for a while maybe it would be somebody from DEA, somebody from ATF, and it was the FBI's turn, and he was coming back from being legal attaché, which is an FBI position. And there was a vacancy. The former head left, so he got that job.
Interesting. Is he still alive?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. So I guess do you talk to him quite often?
Not that much about stuff like this anymore.
I say he would be a great source for your books.
Yeah, he's been retired for a long time. I mean, the FBI has really changed since these days.
He would be great for if you're going to go do, an era kind of book.
Yeah, that would be cool.
You could do a character based on your dad.
Yeah.
That's kind of what my second question was, is do you have any military law enforcement background? And then through your father, the FBI, you've got that. Did you ever have, any desire to get into the FBI or that line of work?
I did. And I think I filled out an application when I worked at the bank, and I'd really thought about it, but that's a tough life. And it had changed a lot from when my father had done it. And so in the end, I decided against it, that it wasn't really for me.
Sure. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I don't.
No. Only child.
Yep.
Spoiled rotten. When it comes to pop culture, what is your go-to for just escapism, whether it's a movie, a book, video games? What is...
For me, it's music.
Music, okay.
Yeah, I'm a huge music fan. So I listen to it all day. Alternative, mostly.
Give me an example.
Oh God, I mean, I listened to some really weird stuff. I was in a punk band when I was in college.
Okay.
So I continue to listen to really strange stuff. So I'll give you my
punk kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, not really punk anymore. I mean, I still listen to some of that stuff because it's out of my youth, but I listen to this radio station on the internet a lot called Bagel Radio. Bagel Radio. So you should check that out. It has all like really interesting news stuff and really creative stuff.
Is this like on the internet radio?
The internet. Yeah. Okay. If you typed in Bagel Radio into the internet, you could find it. Pretty weird. I'll grant you, I have very strange taste in music, so not for everybody.
I like variety. I can't say that I like just one certain genre of music. I like what I like,
Yeah.
I like everything from death metal to Barbra Streisand. So
yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I have like a million radio stations I listen to. Like I'll listen to a whole day on bluegrass, but whatever.
I do.
As long as it's good.
You remember back in our day, they had the mixtapes. You would make
Oh yeah.
The
Yeah.
mixtapes. I still do that, but I do it digitally. I make digital mixtapes, and that's what I listen to. I put it on like shuffle, and I just listen to what I want to listen to that way.
Exactly. Me too.
That's one of the great technology advancements that they made was being able to do that. And instead of getting your cassette tapes all pulled out and having to rewind them back up with your fingers. You remember doing that?
Oh yeah.
I just recently, my parents growing up, we had a record player, an old record player, Victor, RCA Victor.
Victrola. Yeah.
Yeah. And just went into my mom's attic the other day, and it was still sitting there. But yeah, so I drug that out, and I've been listening to some old vinyl. It's bringing back some old memories there. But really, I've enjoyed that.
Vinyl's coming back, they keep telling me. So
it's been back for a long time.
Yeah.
I was in a store the other day, and they sell record players again.
I got to go up in my attic. I probably got all these like old punk records.
There you go.
That are like old first. They're probably worth like a ton of money now.
Yeah, but I guarantee you, it wouldn't be worth as much than you just sitting down and listening to them again, right?
Yeah, I'd have to buy a record player.
They're easy.
I haven't seen one of those in a long time.
I was in a Books A Million the other day, and they sell them in Books A Million.
Do they really?
Yeah, it was only like $70.
Oh, that's funny. I'll have to go pick one up because I know that would definitely bring back some memories.
Yeah, and it's got its own like speakers that pop out, and then you can Bluetooth through it, and whenever you play records, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So, movie-wise, what's your favorite all-time movie?
My favorite all-time movie.
Yeah, one you can just sit down and watch over and over and over again.
Maybe The Godfather.
Oh yeah, you into the Godfather series?
Yeah, I like that movie a lot. The first couple.
Yeah.
Movies that I would watch over and over again. It's funny. They're like cheesy. I don't know.
That's
funny.
fine.
Like how many times have I watched The Godfather? Maybe 3 or 4, or like Apocalypse Now. That sounds a really highbrow, and I really love those movies. But I play guitar, and so I don't like to pay attention to movies too much.
Yeah.
I watch them, but it's kind of I'm focused on something else.
Yeah.
So I love cheesy kind of action movies. So like if I thought about what movie have I seen the most times in my life, it would be either Dawn of the Dead or Predator.
Predator, yeah.
Because Predator's an awesome movie to just play guitar to, because you can stop when you get to the really cool parts, and
Yeah. That's kind of what I do is, I need some background noise. So I'll put on something that's familiar. So I'll play a movie, like Predator or, Top Gun or, something like that I know, and I'll have it playing in the background, and then I'll, do like when I'm editing or, something like that. I still got to have like background noise.
Yeah. For me, that'd be music. I don't think I could concentrate with people talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even one of the reasons I listen to Bagel radios. They don't have commercials, because anytime a commercial comes on, I have to turn off the sound or else I can't work.
I mean, I think commercials are going to be a thing of the past before long, with these streaming networks and whatnot. I can't sit down and watch a cable show anymore. Can't do it.
No, it's incredible how many commercials there are.
It's aggravating.
Yeah, it is.
So you're into outdoor sports, obviously, and you're into music. If you could, no, I'll ask that one next. What is your next wanna have piece of equipment for your favorite hobby? What's something your eye is like, I'm going to get that, as soon as I go out and get it?
I just bought it this morning.
Oh, you already did that? Okay.
Yeah. So it's a bike trainer that kind of connects to a game on the internet called Zwift, where you can race against real people on real courses.
Oh, cool.
But it's like a video game, and it's all controlled. So you put your bike on, and it, like when you go up a hill, it gets harder, and your speeds are real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you could race people in a realistic way, and I can ride with my friends
That's
at their houses. But I've never gotten one because I have a snow bike. I have like 8 bikes, but like, so I never really like to ride the trainer. It's horrible. But with COVID, it's the off season now, and you can't do much.
Yeah.
So I thought I'm going to go sit in my basement and ride. And
so is this something you can hook up one of your existing bikes to, or is it its own standalone bike?
No, you put one of your bikes.
You use your own equipment. That's
it.
Cool. Yeah, that's real cool. Yeah.
And so this one, you can hook up with like a friend.
Yeah.
So
that makes it cool.
In a world, and all the people riding it are real, and so you can hook up with your friend and like chat with them.
So Lance Armstrong might be on there, one day.
Yeah,
you could race. You could race.
He is on there. Yeah. I don't think I'd do very well against him though.
I don't know. I mean, he's human like the rest of us.
Barely. I've ridden with pros before, and I'm not entirely sure I'd call them human.
All right. So if money were no object, money be damned, laws be damned, what would be something that you would want to possess?
I write about Mitch Rapp flying on a G550. He's got a private jet.
Yeah.
And I would never really do that. I mean, even if I was super rich, because it just seems really obnoxious. But, well, I say that, but if I had the money, I probably would. But I would love to have a Learjet. That's a Gulfstream. But any kind of super luxurious private jet, and never go to the airport again, and just hop on my jet and fly wherever I wanted to.
Oh man, some of these jets are outrageous. I mean, they're like a penthouse suite or something. The way some of these people have them decked out. I used to work at the airport when I was in college, and I worked on the private side, so we would get all the corporate jets and things came into our FBO, and I would get to go on them. Clean them and whatnot and check them out. So I got to see some pretty cool jets. Bill Cosby's came in one time, got to get on his G5. It was pretty cool. Air Force One. I've been on Air Force One.
Oh, have you? See, that's the only reason I'd ever run for president. If I won, I'd hand it all over to the vice president and be like, I'm just in it for the sweet jet.
Right. They're just here for the fringe benefits. You can run the country. So this one is typically based on the spend the day at the range with, but I'll reword it. During these times, the coronavirus times here in our quarantine, who is somebody that you would like to spend quarantine with? They could be a fictional character. They could be dead. It could be a historical figure. Could be a group of people.
That I'm really trapped with.
Well, there's just that you'd want to spend the day with. Typically I ask the question is, who would you like to spend the day at the range with?
It's kind of an interesting question because a friend of mine has this. He has this as his litmus test, and it's would you drive to Salt Lake with? And so if he says I wouldn't drive to Salt Lake with that person, that means that's like his biggest insult.
Right.
That'd be basically, would I be stuck in the car for 5 hours with that person?
Yeah.
Gosh, who would it be?
It could be a historical figure. It could be a fictional character.
Typically,
we say at the range.
I'm going to give you a super controversial one.
Super controversial. Okay.
I would say Barack Obama.
Okay.
Because I would really like to talk to him about his thought process on some of the things that he was involved in and that he did.
I don't think that's controversial at all. I mean, that would be an interesting day to spend the day. I would like to spend a day with Barack Obama too. Same reason.
So I would drive to Salt Lake I would agree to drive to Salt Lake with Barack Obama.
Okay. What if it was a fictional character? Who would you like to?
Oh, maybe like ride across the Wyoming plains with Gus McCrae from Lonesome Dove. I love that character.
Okay.
the old Texas Ranger.
Yeah.
Get to hear his stories.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I love all the Western stuff here. I actually have a friend whose father I was at a party with, and he's an old rancher here, and said that they were talking about some old guy who had just died, and he said, I never liked that guy. His granddaddy used to ride with the Sundance Kid. And I thought, holy crap, I am so in Wyoming right now.
Right. I want to hear that
totally
story.
Serious.
That would be a great story to hear. Absolutely.
So yeah, the Sundance Kid would be another good choice.
Yeah.
Though not a fictional character.
What about a musician, since you're into music? What musician would you like?
Look, geez, there's so many of them. Probably PJ Harvey, who I have a huge admiration for her music and her ability to do pretty much anything she wants. And I'd love to know how she manages that, like to do a punk album and then like a really lo-fi album and then show tunes and like. But I have great admiration for people who can do anything. Like, I mean, it's incredible to be able to do one thing well, but I've always been fascinated with, like, particularly musicians, because that's what I always really wanted to be, but I have no talent. But like musical talent, I just find baffling. And it's funny because people ask me about writing, which came easy to me. And I think it's the same thing when I ask musicians about things, and they to me, it's amazing that they can do it. And to them, it's just, I don't know, I picked up the guitar and
just something I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second nature. Well, very good. Well, you answered those questions good. You got through those fine. They weren't too bad, were they?
No, not at all.
So one more time, give your social medias, your website, and the name of the book there, The Total Power. Yeah,
so Total Power, out now in hardback, everywhere you would probably ever look for it. I don't think it's going to be too hard to find. Kyle Mills, or www.kylemills.com is my website, and Kyle Mills author. You can find me on kind of all the normal social media things. Not the kids stuff like TikTok. I haven't figured those out yet.
No, that's just too much. I mean, like 2 social media things to manage is enough for people our age, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we got to get somebody else to manage it for us. So.
Agreed.
And on your website, when you start your touring again, do you put your schedule on there?
Yeah. Hopefully I'll tour again for the next book. So that'd be September.
Okay.
Next September. Assuming the world is back to normal and we have a vaccine and people are flying around and going to events.
And are you doing anything outside the Mitch Rapp series right now?
Not right now. Okay. It's all I can do. There's so many authors now that are doing like three books a year and stuff. I don't see how. Yeah. I mean, my hat is off to them, but I can't do it.
They got to have people. There's got to be other people. Involved.
Some of them they're just fast. I don't know. I think they're more dedicated than I am. They'll get up at 9 a.m. and write until midnight, and I just can't do that.
Are you one of those, right? You got to be in the mood to write, or you have to sit down and force yourself sometimes?
Sometimes you got to sit down, or I do have to sit down and force myself. You got deadlines and all that. You can't. The luxury of laziness and writer's block doesn't work anymore. So, but some people, I swear to God, they don't. If they aren't writing their novel, they're writing a script or an article or whatever, and it's amazing to watch.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview, Kyle. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on. Would love to have you on again. So when the new book is getting ready to come out, make sure you get in touch with us. We'll have you on. We'll talk about it. By then, hopefully I've knocked out at least 5 of the Mitch Rapp series, and I'll be slowly catching up. Maybe I should start at the back and at the most recent and work my way back. I don't know.
No. Start with American Assassin and go watch him age.
Okay.
Like, because all those characters start to appear in his life and come and go and everything. So it's, you're following a guy's entire life in chronological order. It's super fun.
Very cool. I'm definitely going to do that. Leadheads, again, make sure you go show Kyle some love on his social medias. Let him know you heard about him here on the Talking Lead podcast, and let him know how you like his books.
Yeah.
So that does it for another episode of the Talking Lead podcast, Leadheads. Make sure you go and support those that sponsor this show, and we appreciate that. They appreciate it. But until then, as always, keep your loved ones close.
And your firearms closer. And don't forget all your Mitch Rapp.
Yeah, get caught up on the Mitch Rapp series, because I'm going to. It'll give us something to chat about on the social medias, Leadheads.